Welcome to another episode of AutoMundial, the weekly car news and review show, where this week we're taking a look at everything from Citroën vans to the latest V8 Aston Martin.
We also have the Bentley Flying Spur and the KTM Superduke. All that is coming up. First though,
in light of the ongoing pandemic, stories have been emerging from around the world showing the global community in action, and the automotive industry is no exception. Thanks to the industry's technological muscle, Mercedes, Ford, McLaren and Rolls-Royce are providing thousands of intensive care-grade ventilators alongside factory floor space and logistical know-how. Rolls-Royce is set to manufacture 30,000 breathing aids in just a matter of weeks, while 7 Formula One teams are also bolstering the support under the title Project Pit Lane. Despite the lack of action on the road, it is heartening to see the car world linking arms, a move which is set to save thousands of lives worldwide. Big luxury limos are normally found quietly wafting around city centres and financial districts at single-digit speeds. Usually found with a chauffeur behind the wheel, refinement tends to be the priority, with performance taking a back seat.
This, though, is the all-new Bentley Flying Spur, and it has its priorities set a little differently. Up front, you'll find a gigantic 6-litre twin-turbo W12 kicking out 626 brake horsepower and 664 feet-pounds of torque. Drive goes to all 4 wheels, meaning a 0 to 62 time of 3.8 seconds, while the top speed is 207 miles per hour. Oh yes, your chauffeur has never had it so good. Bentley claims class-leading stiffness too, but air suspension is on hand to avoid any champagne spillages in the back. It can be firmed up though in sport mode, allowing it to handle almost as well as the Continental GT on which it's based. In fact, the Flying Spur is just 0.2 of a second slower to 62 than the coupe, and the top speed is identical. That's hugely impressive for a bigger car with 2 extra doors. And despite a 130mm longer wheelbase than the old model, the 2019 Flying Spur is only slightly longer overall thanks to shorter overhangs. Interior space has been increased, meaning it's comfier than ever. There are new heated, ventilated massage seats covered in only the very finest leather from Bentley. To completely upholster and stitch a Flying Spur interior takes 26 hours. This is a proper luxury car. There's virtually no plastic to be found in the cabin, with beautifully knurled aluminium switchgear and gorgeous wood veneers. It also gets the same rotating screen in the dash as the Continental, the sort of classically British feature you just don't get in a Mercedes or a Porsche.
Speaking of Porsche though, the Panamera shares its platform with the new Bentley. And while it may not come with a massive W12, the 671 brake horsepower Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid gets from 0 to 62 in 3.4 seconds, while getting 97.4 miles per gallon on a cruise. In fact, we can think of few other cars that offer that sort of performance and economy. It even has an EV mode that enables around 30 miles of electric-only driving. On a twisty road too, the Porsche is a bit more driver-focused than the Bentley. Turn-in is much quicker with sports car sharpness and instant acceleration. What the Porsche can't offer, however, is the pure opulence and luxury of the Flying Spur.
The two cars' interiors are worlds apart, with the ultra-modern Panamera totally outclassed by the Bentley. The materials in the Flying Spur are on another level. The carpets are thick and spongy, while the quilted leather cocoons you whether you sit up front or in the back. The options list is vast too, meaning no two Flying Spurs will likely be the same. Everything from super premium sound systems to fancy oil caps is available, with endless colour and interior trim options. This then is more than just a limo. It's a piece of automotive self-expression that has no real direct rivals. It's a car that you could be chauffeured in on a weekday commute and then grab by the scruff of the neck for a weekend blast. It weighs just under 2.5 tons, yet it feels totally composed on the road as you push it. Bentley Motors has been building cars for over 100 years now, and the Flying Spur seems like the perfect culmination of Bentley's heritage. Unlike Rolls-Royce, Bentley has always pursued performance just as much as luxury, with racing success at Le Mans and in various GT championships. The Flying Spur captures the spirit of the racing cars, while continuing the brand's history of building some of the finest, most opulent vehicles on the road. Porsche underpinnings or not, the Flying Spur is well deserving of its Flying Bee mascot.
And from 4 wheels to 2 with a new bike from KTM.
The Beast 3.0, that's what KTM is calling its new 1290 Superduke R. It's down to us to find out whether they're right and whether the name is appropriate. On paper, 180 horsepower and 140 newton meters of torque is pretty beastly, but more than that, if you look at the dyno curves from 3,500 RPM, it makes over 100 newton meters of torque. That's a pretty outstanding figure, and it means that whatever revs you're going to do, it should always drive really hard while under control. The 1290 has a whole new engine, it has a whole new frame, the wheels have been redesigned, and it bears a resemblance to the family, but really has changed a lot. One thing that they really tried to do with this Superduke is to make it more usable. They've worked on the suspension with some really in-depth changes. They've used the linkage system for the first time on the Superduke to try and get it to be a bit more compliant on the road, to work better as a road bike, while maintaining that high-end sporty performance and to still work better than it used to on track. They've done a lot of work with WP. There's some really high quality kit now on this bike, and we're hoping it's going to translate into a bike that's better on the road and better on the track. KTM has really gone through every single component on this bike and looked at ways to make it better. There's no fat left on it. They've just improved to make the bike higher performing, work better on the road and on the track, which is sometimes two conflicting areas, and then just to future-proof for boring things like 4 and 5 regulations. Now the electronic side of it. It now has a 6-dimensional motion sensor, so it can sense front and rear pitch. It can sense roll left to right, and it can now sense yaw. So it's got a degree of slide control built into it, both for backing in, for when you're accelerating out of the turn, and for when the rear wheel steps out. They've changed all of the switchgear, so it's now more advanced and well thought out and easy. It's easy to get it all, and there is a programmable button on the switchgear as well, and the menu is on the dash. They've evolved to be more logical and easier to use. The suspension itself consists of some WP Apex forks and shock. They actually do a race kit version where you can get a closed cartridge fork, which is amazing. They've really worked on the settings on the shock. The linkage has a much softer spring rate, and again they've gone through all the damping and the valving and put so much work into the development of the suspension. And again, WP have come up with proper high-end components. There's no kind of non-adjustable basic fork here. One of the most amusing parts of the press presentation was when they said if we could get away with it, we would give you just 2 wheels and an engine, but unfortunately we've got to give you a seat and handlebars. And it does show the philosophy of this bike. It's trying to be as minimalist as possible, as pure as possible, just to have the bare minimum to make the bike fun to ride, fast, safe, and a really exhilarating place to be. We've recently ridden a 226 horsepower superbike, a certain Ducati, and then jumped straight onto this thing. This has 40 horsepower less at peak power, but all the same we're still having to meter the throttle even more carefully because the torque figure on this bike and the way it delivers power low down in the revs is simply astounding. Pick up that gas and it's smooth, but it wants to go. You've got to be careful with this because if you're a bit wild, it's going to eat you for breakfast.
After the break, some mad concept cars and a new Aston Martin.
Coming up, Jaguar versus Aston. But first,
last week on the show, we slid on a cool pair of rose-tinted specs and gazed upon some of the wildest concept cars from 2010. And with the continued lack of motoring events taking place this year, we thought we'd continue the theme. On the face of it, 2011 didn't appear to be a particularly exciting year for cars. Once again, the Toyota Corolla topped the worldwide sales charts, while SUVs continued to fill showrooms. At the motor shows, though, manufacturers big and small gave us plenty to talk about.
Land Rover finally gave us a taste of what the new Defender would go on to look like with the DC100. With Tonka toy styling and typical Land Rover abilities, the DC100 was very well received, although the estimated £20,000 to £25,000 price tag seems to have gone out the window, with the new Defender coming in at around double that. But the DC100 wasn't alone. As its reveal in Frankfurt, it was joined by this, the DC100 Sport Concept, a topless two-seater roadster with off-road credibility. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we haven't seen a convertible version of the new Defender make it into production as yet. So for those of you wanting a four-wheel drive beach buggy, this concept will have to suffice. Based on a shortened Range Rover Sport chassis, the Sport Concept ditched the regular version's four-cylinder in favour of the big V8. There was nothing about it that resembled Defenders of the time, but perhaps this was the inspiration for the ill-fated Evoque convertible.
But the DC100 wasn't the weirdest open-top concept car of 2011. Enter the Rinspeed Bamboo. The Swiss design house has become famous for its wacky one-offs, so much so that the Bamboo almost seems a little tame for Rinspeed. With a canvas roof and some headlights pinched from a Mini, the Bamboo was designed purely as a beach car, something to ferry holidaymakers from villa to seafront in style. Designed by pop artist James Rizzi, the Bamboo harked back to the Citroën Maharis and Mini Mokes, with two seats up front and a pickup bed at the back. It made use of a small 72 horsepower electric motor, perfect for zipping around Saint-Tropez with a range of around 65 miles, and, best of all, the roof could double up as a beach blanket.
the Jaguar F-Type has always been a great-looking car, with a classic sports car shape, a long bonnet up front, two seats in the middle and a short rear end. But with the design starting to get a little long in the tooth, Jaguar has given us a new one. And here it is. More of a heavy facelift than a new model, the 2020 F-Type looks better than ever, with an XC-inspired front end, swapping the old tail lights for narrower, horizontal ones. The old bumper bar has gone too, with the number plate now sitting within the smart new grille. Either side, there are some new wide air intakes, creating an aggressive look and improving cooling. The clamshell bonnet has also been updated. It's lower and now reaches further towards the front of the car. Inside though, the changes have mainly been focused around improving fit and finish, with gorgeous new materials to help it keep up with its rivals. But it's under the bonnet where we find the biggest differences between this and the old car. Sadly, buyers will no longer be able to revel in the pops and bangs of the charismatic old V6, instead having the choice between the entry-level 2-litre 4-cylinder car with 296 brake horsepower or two 5-litre V8 options with either 444 or 567 bhp. It retains the different drive layouts though, with top-spec cars getting all-wheel drive, with the lower output V8 and 4-cylinder car getting drive sent to the rear wheels. The 2-litre car offers more modest performance and better economy, but it's the bigger V8 cars that we're really interested in. The less powerful V8, the P450, hits 62 mph from rest in 4.5 seconds and tops out at 177 mph, is spec'd correctly. The P450 is available with either rear or all-wheel drive, depending on what the customer is more likely to use the car for. Of course, we'd recommend keeping it simple and sending all the power to the back for a classic sports car experience. But the option of all-wheel drive keeps it competitive against its main competition, the Porsche 911.
Like the Jaguar, the ever-popular 911 is available with all sorts of layouts and power outputs. As the current range stands, the entry-level Carrera sends 380 brake horsepower to the rear wheels, making it good for 0 to 62 in 4 seconds flat with the optional Sports Chrono Pack. But if you want the security of drive going to all 4 wheels, you need to step up to the Carrera 4. This drops the 0 to 62 time to well below 4 seconds, making it a great match for the most powerful F-Type, the 567 bhp P575. With all that power and grip, the supercharged V8 Jag hits 62 in 3.7 seconds onto a top speed of 186. And whether you go for the coupe or the convertible, the sound is incredible, reminiscent of old Le Mans cars. But since the Geneva Motor Show was cancelled in March, there's a third way for the sports car buyer who wants the wind in their hair. This is the brand new Aston Martin Vantage Roadster, taking everything we loved about the coupe and adding more theatre. The awkward front grille has been fixed thanks to a more traditional Aston design, while the lack of roof does little to detract from the rest of the car's muscular good looks. Unlike the Jaguar and the Porsche, there is only one drivetrain option, a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 from AMG, producing 503 bhp, all of which is sent to the rear wheels only. 0 to 62 takes 3.8 seconds, just 0.2 more than the coupe. It is pricey though, especially when compared to the great value Jaguar.
The F-Type then is as desirable as it ever was. It looks stunning and packs enough of a punch to mix with much more expensive rivals.
This is the BMW 328 Homage. As the name suggests, it was designed to pay tribute to the 328 Tourers of the 1930s. Unveiled at the incredibly exclusive Villa d'Este Concorso d'Eleganza, the Homage was oozing with retro details. It had some leather bonnet straps, knock-off wheel spinners, and a pair of iPhones on the dash disguised as stopwatches. Naturally, it used a straight 6 engine up front, while the body was crafted from carbon fibre reinforced plastic, as used in contemporary M cars.